So now we're going to take a kind of a change of pace here and start looking at SQL statements that modify the data in a database. That is, we'll add rows into tables, we'll delete rows, and we'll change the contents of existing rows and tables. So there's a create, update, and delete is what we'll be doing here. Now, this is the first time we've actually modified data in an existing database. And so it's possible and actually probable that as you're doing this, you'll make a mistake and accidentally update a bunch of records you didn't mean to, or delete a bunch of records you didn't mean to, and so on. And the important thing to remember is, if that happens, if you mess up your data, it's not a big deal. Over here, we've got the college create script, which we can run at any time, and it will completely rebuild the college database when we run it. Okay, it runs in just a couple of seconds, and we get our college database back, and all the data is back as well. So don't be afraid of experimenting with the data with these update statements and delete and insert statements, because if you do screw up and mess up your data, you can just rebuild it in a couple of seconds, and you're right back where you were before. So the first of these statements we're going to look at is the insert statement. Insert is a SQL keyword for a statement that adds new rows into an existing table. So let's take a look at our major table right here and just have a peek at its contents. And remember, I'm just selecting this statement, and when I click on the lightning bolt, then we'll run and see just that statement. And then we get these rows out of it. Let me get rid of that. And we can see we got a total of 8 records in here. Now, what we want to do is add a new major into the system. There's a couple columns we need to worry about here, the name and the status. So we say insert into major, there's our table name, and then in parens we give the columns that we're going to update, name and status. Then in the second part of the insert statement, we have the values clause, where again inside parentheses we provide values to these two fields. So insert into major, name, status, and information technology. Let's run this statement. And when it runs, not much seems to happen. We should get a message down here in the this statement saying one row was affected. We inserted one new row in the table. And let's list out the contents of the table. It had 8 records before, and now it has a 9th record. So that's how you add a new row into an existing table. It's possible, and in the insert statement, to insert multiple rows in a table, all in a single statement. So let's get rid of that so we can see more of the statement here. First of all, I'm going to select just the last 5 records in the student table before the change. Let's just take a look at that data so we can get a feel for what it looks like. So here's the last 5 records. I sorted descending on the ID. So I see record number 100, 99, 98, 97, 96, and so on. And I limited it to just 5. If not, I think there's hundreds of rows in the student table, and this would list out many of them. But I only wanted to see 5 records. So here's the 5 most recently added rows in the table. So let's change the table. Let's insert into the student table. And here's all the fields that we're going to have to supply values for. When you put a field in this list, then in your values clause, you have to provide a value for every one of those fields. So the number of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, has to equal the number of parts of the values clause. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they'll match. Now, this will insert one row into the student table, and notice that outside the parentheses that are wrapping it here, there's a comma. Then we have another row that we're going to insert, and here this person has a longer name, so the statement goes a little bit farther along. And you can match what's going on, and by the way, it does end with a semicolon out here. So here's the last name, here's the first name, here's the person's email, the sex. Looks like I'm misspelling female, M-A-L-E. Let's try and get that right. Birthday, enrolled date. I'm just setting it to the current date. So whatever day I happen to run this query on, that date will be stuffed into the enrolled date field. Then the ID of their major, which maps to the major table, and then the amount of their scholarship. So they're each getting $3,000 scholarships. So okay, so here's the last 5 rows right now down here. Let's go ahead and run this insert statement to put 2 new students into the student table. And I got an error because there's already a Deborah Dutton with that email address in it. Let's just change this person's name. Debbie. It's a pretty poor change, Frank, but it'll work for the moment. Now look, I screwed it up because I've inserted this Robert Biggs. He got inserted, so I'm going to just step over here and rebuild the whole database just like that. And that's all done in just a second. Now let's try running this insert statement. 2 rows affected were entered into the database. So let's now look at the last 5 rows in the table. Now we have Debbie at 102 and Bob Biggs at 101. So we added these last 2 rows and we're seeing only 5 rows here. So that's how you add new rows into an existing table. You use the insert statement, you give a list of the fields here, and then you provide the values for them. And if you put a comma here, you can insert a bunch of rows all in one crack inside the insert statement. And again, if you screw it up, you just come over here and run college create, and you'll just in a few seconds you will completely rebuild the database.